Officer Brandon Matthews didn't recognize her face at first, not until she started crying. The traffic stop was routine. License plate had been running dark for 3 days, and he'd been looking for an excuse to get out of the precinct. The woman behind the wheel of the silver Lexus was black, mid-40s, wearing what looked like business attire even though it was 11 at night. She'd pulled over without hesitation, hands visible, everything by the book. But something about her made Brandon's jaw tighten. Maybe it was her composure. Maybe it was the fact that she didn't immediately start apologizing like they usually did. He approached the driver's side window with his flashlight raised, his free hand resting on his belt near his duty weapon. The routine, the performance, the power. "License and registration," he barked, not bothering with pleasantries. "Now!" She lowered her window slowly, her dark eyes meeting his for just a moment before she reached for the glove compartment. Her hands trembled slightly. Good, he thought. Fear was easier to work with than composure. But as he scanned the documents, something flickered in his expression. A twitch. A pause that lasted maybe 2 seconds too long. "Step out of the vehicle," he commanded, his voice suddenly tighter. "Hands where I can see them." "Officer, I don't understand what—" "I said step out." What happened next would destroy his career. What happened next would make the local news. What happened next would be the moment Brandon Matthews learned that humiliation travels much faster than respect, and that some mistakes don't forgive themselves. But that's not where the story starts. Let me take you back to 3 weeks earlier, when everything still made sense. Ashley Washington had built a life on precision. Every morning at 5:30, her alarm went off. Not the cruel blare of most people's phones, but a gentle bird song that gradually increased in volume. She'd trained herself to wake before it fully sounded, a small victory over the chaos that demanded to be scheduled. The master bedroom of her Arlington townhouse caught the first light through the east-facing windows, and she'd lie there for exactly 3 minutes, letting her eyes adjust, her breathing settle into its daytime rhythm. The coffee maker was programmed to start at 5:45. By the time her feet hit the cool hardwood floor, the smell had already begun its gentle invasion of the second floor. French press, locally roasted from the shop on Wilson Boulevard, not the chain stuff. That was important to her, though she couldn't entirely explain why. Maybe because her mother had worked as a housekeeper for people who bought cheap coffee and complained about the taste. Maybe because choosing the better thing, even when it cost more, felt like proof that she'd made it. Ashley's morning routine took exactly 45 minutes. Shower with water as hot as she could tolerate, a brief rebellion against control. Lotion from Kiehl's. The Estee Lauder moisturizer that her friend Jennifer had given her last Christmas, the kind that made her skin feel like something worth protecting. Hair in a neat bun at the nape of her neck, not a strand out of place. Makeup minimal but perfect. Foundation that matched her skin exactly, a swipe of mascara, a lipstick the color of a sunset in a better world than this one. Her work wardrobe hung in a separate section of her walk-in closet, organized by color and occasion. Today was Thursday, client meetings, so she chose the navy Armani suit that made her feel like she could negotiate with God himself. The heels were Italian leather, barely broken in, expensive enough to hurt her feet by lunch, and cheap enough that losing them wouldn't destroy her. That was her life in a metaphor. By 6:45, she was in her car, a 2019 Mercedes, financed over 4 years, the payment something she could have made without thinking about, but preferred to think about anyway. The drive to the office in Bethesda took 30 minutes, and she spent it listening to NPR, not music. She needed the news like other people needed coffee. She needed to know what the world was doing without her. The firm was called Washington & Associates, though the Washington had nothing to do with her. The name had been there for 37 years, and when she'd made partner 2 years ago, she'd considered asking them to change it. Then she'd realized that would be drawing attention to the fact that she'd noticed the coincidence, and drawing attention to anything was a mistake. So she'd let it stand, and people sometimes smiled when they looked at her business card, and sometimes those smiles were the wrong kind. Her office was on the 4th floor, corner space, the kind of real estate that you earned or married into. Ashley had earned it. She was a corporate attorney, specializing in contract law and intellectual property disputes. She made $420,000 a year, which meant she paid taxes like a person should, owned her townhouse outright except for the modest mortgage, and had investments that grew without her thinking about them. She had a 401k with a balance that made her feel simultaneously secure and terrified. She had health insurance that actually covered things. She had built something. At 8:15, her door opened without a knock. That was Marcus, her paralegal, who'd been with her for 4 years and had learned that her mornings were sacred. He held 2 coffee cups and a stack of folders. "The Henderson brief is on your desk," he said, setting down the coffee, regular, 2 sugars, the way she'd trained him without ever telling him how she liked it. "They called at 7. They're nervous about the injunction language." "Of course they are," Ashley said, not looking up from her email. "They should be. Did you send them the red line?" 20 minutes ago. You'll want to read it before they call back." Marcus was 32, with a sharp haircut and a wedding ring that he mentioned exactly once a month, usually when his wife had done something impressive. He was building his own life, and Ashley had made sure to recommend him for every opportunity that came across her desk. That was the deal she'd made with herself. If she made it, she'd pull others up. Not out of altruism, though there was some of that, but because she understood that luck was mostly timing, and timing was mostly the people who bothered to help you. By 10 o'clock, she was on a video call with a team in California, talking through the architecture of a licensing agreement that would either make one company look genius or destroy a startup's chances before they really started. She had the power to tip that scale, and she wielded it carefully. Not kindly. Kindness was a luxury people with less to prove could afford. But fairly. That was her brand. At 12:30, her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. "Saw your picture in the Montgomery County newsletter. You look tired." Ashley smiled despite herself. Her mother, Linda Washington, was 71 years old and had never used the internet for anything besides checking her email and looking at Ashley's Facebook page, yet somehow always knew everything. The newsletter had featured Ashley as part of a pro bono initiative the firm was launching. She'd worn the Armani suit for that photo, too. She texted back, "It's just the lighting. Dinner Sunday?" The response was immediate. "Only if you cook. Your fried chicken is the only thing keeping me alive." Ashley laughed. Actually laughed, not the professional chuckle she deployed in conference rooms. This was real. This was home, in the way that being home could never actually be home anymore because she'd left it, and leaving meant you could never quite go back the same way. She and her mother lived 30 minutes apart, close enough to see each other weekly, far enough that it never felt like obligation. Linda had raised Ashley alone, working as a housekeeper, then as a home health aide, then as an office manager for a dental practice. She'd never remarried after Ashley's father had decided that being a father was less interesting than being absent. Linda had just kept working, kept showing up, kept believing that her daughter would be something. And Ashley had become something, and now she bought her mother nice things. A new car every 5 years, a kitchen renovation, a trip to Aruba, and sometimes wondered if that was a way of saying thank you or a way of saying sorry for leaving. The afternoon was consumed by depositions, a Zoom call that could have been an email, a lunch at her desk that she forgot to eat. By 4 o'clock, the light had changed outside her window, and she realized she'd been staring at the same paragraph for 20 minutes without processing it. That's when David called. David Chen was her ex-boyfriend, though ex didn't quite capture the complexity of what they were. They'd dated for 3 years, lived together for 2, and had ended things amicably enough that they still called each other on birthdays and occasionally grabbed drinks. He worked in venture capital, made more money than Ashley, and had the kind of casual confidence that came from never having to wonder whether his competence would be questioned based on his appearance. She'd loved him, she thought. Or maybe she'd loved the idea that someone like him could love someone like her. "Hey, stranger," he said when she picked up. "Bad time?" "Always," she said, and it was true. "What's up?" "Just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a while. You good?" This was the thing about David. He actually cared, in a way that didn't demand anything of her. It was one of the reasons they'd broken up. He'd wanted her to care back, and she'd been too busy building the life that would make caring possible. "I'm good," she said. "Work's insane, but good insane." "The best kind," he said. "Hey, are you doing anything Saturday? Some people are getting together at that wine place in DuPont. Nothing formal, just drinks." She should have said no. She had a brief due Monday that still needed 2 more revisions. She had research that needed to be done. She had all the reasons that people with power always have for not making time for the people who just want to spend time with them. "Sure," she said. "What time?" 7? I'll text you the address." After she hung up, Ashley sat at her desk for another minute, watching the light change again. In the glass of her office window, she could see her reflection, professional, composed, alone. She looked at this version of herself and wondered who she was when nobody was watching. That's when her work phone buzzed. An email from Robert Sterling, the managing partner of the firm. "Can you stop by my office before you leave? Nothing urgent. Just want to catch up." Robert was 62, had been there since the beginning, and had a reputation for being fair in a profession not known for fairness. He'd been the one to push for her partnership, had stood in meetings and said her name like it meant something. She owed him the kind of loyalty that you can't usually afford to give anyone. She gathered her things and made her way to the 5th floor, where the air somehow seemed different, thinner, more important. Robert's office was 4 times the size of hers, with a view that included the Washington Monument on a clear day. Today was clear. "Ashley," he said, standing as she entered. He was one of the few people in the firm who did that. "Thanks for coming up. Sit." She sat in one of the leather chairs across from his desk. On the wall behind him were photos of his family, a wife, 2 daughters, a sailboat. A life that looked like it had been assembled from a catalog for the well-adjusted. "I want to talk to you about the Stratton account," he said, settling back into his chair. "We're going to be losing them next month. Contract's ending, they're moving to DLA Piper. It happens." "I wasn't aware," Ashley said, though she should have been. She was the lead on that account. "Just found out myself," he said, and something in his expression shifted. They specifically asked for someone else to handle the transition. They said they wanted someone with more, let's call it, cultural fit with their executive team. The words landed carefully, the way you drop things into water to see how far down they go. Ashley understood what he wasn't saying. She understood that cultural fit was a euphemism, the way all the worst things in life are euphemisms. She understood that she was being told something important, and that Robert was doing her the courtesy of delivering it slowly, as if that would make it hurt less. "I see," she said. "I know you do," Robert said, and he looked genuinely sorry, which somehow made it worse. "I wanted you to hear it from me, and I want you to know that it doesn't reflect anything about your work. Your work is excellent. This is just about how they relate to their attorneys. Comfort level." "Comfort level," she repeated. "I'm sorry, Ashley, I really am." She left his office 15 minutes later with a reassurance that meant nothing, and a reality that meant everything. The Stratton account was worth about $80,000 a year in billable hours. It wasn't going to destroy her financially, but it would be noticed. It would be a small mark on a record that had been, until now, unmarked. In her car on the drive home, Ashley called her mother. "Hi, baby," Linda answered. She always answered like she'd been waiting for the call, even if Ashley had just spoken to her that morning. "How was your day?" "Long," Ashley said, "but fine. Still coming Sunday?" "Wouldn't miss it," Linda said. "You making the biscuits or the rolls?" "Biscuits," Ashley said. "Good," Linda said. "Your rolls are like hockey pucks. I love you anyway, but we don't need to put that on the menu." Ashley smiled despite everything. Her mother had a way of making the world seem manageable, like it was just a matter of figuring out which recipe to use. She got home at 7 o'clock to her empty townhouse with its carefully curated furniture and its photographs on the wall of places she'd traveled alone. She poured herself a glass of wine, a Pinot Grigio she'd been saving for a better day, and sat on her couch and wondered when her life had become something that required a brief to make sense. It was that evening, while scrolling through her phone, that she noticed something odd. A notification on her banking app showing a transfer she didn't remember authorizing. It was small, $300, and it had cleared 3 days ago. She stared at it for a moment, confused. Then she closed the app and opened it again. The notification was still there. She called the bank and they assured her everything was fine, probably just an automatic payment she'd forgotten about. These things happened. She apologized for wasting their time. But something in her chest had tightened. That night, she lay in her bed with the light from the street filtering through her curtains, and she thought about Robert's face, and about the word fit, and about how the world had a way of finding reasons to exclude you even when you'd done everything right. She thought about this until she fell asleep and dreamed in colors that made no sense. Act 4. The Escalation. The weekend came and Ashley attended the wine bar in DuPont Circle, despite every rational part of her telling her not to. David was already there when she arrived, standing with a group of 5 people she half recognized from his venture capital circles. He waved her over with genuine warmth, and for a moment, she let herself relax. The wine was excellent, a Sancerre she'd never tried before, and the conversation drifted easily across topics that didn't require her to defend her competence or her presence. But around 9 o'clock, as she was telling someone about a recent case settlement, her phone buzzed. A notification from her bank. Another unauthorized transaction. This time it was larger, $2,000 transferred to an account she didn't recognize. She stared at the screen, her hand freezing mid-gesture. "You okay?" David asked, noticing her shift. "Fine," she said automatically. "Just work. Let me step outside for a second." She called the bank from the street, and this time the representative's tone was different, more cautious. They'd flagged the first transaction, she was told, but it had cleared before they could reverse it. This second one had triggered an alert. They were investigating. In the meantime, they advised her to change her passwords immediately and consider filing a fraud report with the police. Back inside, Ashley excused herself early, claiming a migraine. David walked her to her car, concerned, and she let him believe her about the headache. She drove home in a state of suspended disbelief, watching her mirrors obsessively, suddenly paranoid about everything. Monday morning, she called the police department. A young officer took her report with the kind of bureaucratic efficiency that made it clear nothing would happen quickly, if at all. Fraud investigations took time. They'd be in touch. She hung up feeling like she'd thrown her words into a void. By Tuesday, she'd changed every password she could think of. She'd set up transaction alerts on all her accounts. She'd checked her credit report and found nothing alarming, at least not yet. But the feeling of violation wouldn't leave her. Someone had access to something. Someone knew something about her finances that they shouldn't. She called her mother that evening. "Did you loan anyone money recently?" Linda asked immediately, her mother's instinct for problems activated by Ashley's careful tone. "No," Ashley said. "I think someone's getting into my accounts." "Oh my God," Linda breathed. "Baby, that's serious. You need to talk to someone. A lawyer. Someone who knows about this stuff." "I'm a lawyer, Mom." "You're a contract lawyer," Linda corrected. "This is different. You need someone who does fraud. You need someone who knows how to protect you." It was sound advice, which made it worse somehow. Ashley had spent her career being the person who gave advice, who had answers. The idea of needing help felt like a concession, like proof that she wasn't as in control as she'd believed. On Wednesday, 3 days after the second transaction, Robert called her into his office again. This time, his expression was different. Apologetic. Tired. "I need to tell you something before you hear it from someone else," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "The Stratton account, the one we discussed last week, they're not just moving to another firm. They're claiming there's been unauthorized access to their account information through our system. They're threatening to file a lawsuit." Ashley felt the room tilt slightly. "What do you mean, unauthorized access?" "Someone with access to sensitive client files has been pulling documents that have nothing to do with their legal matters. Financial records, personal information. They're suggesting someone on our team has been..." He paused, choosing words carefully. "Engaging in activity that violates client confidentiality." "And they think it's me," Ashley said flatly. "They haven't specifically named anyone," Robert said carefully. "But they've requested that all work on their account be transferred immediately. And our IT department is running a full audit of all system access logs." "Robert, I haven't accessed anything I shouldn't have. I've never looked at client files outside of active cases." "I believe you," he said, and he sounded like he did. "But I need you to understand what's happening. If it's not you, then someone is making it look like it is. And if the Strattons file a complaint with the bar, that's serious. That's career-threatening serious." After she left his office, Ashley sat in her car in the parking garage and did something she hadn't done in years. She cried. Not delicate tears, but the kind of crying that comes from the realization that you're under attack from a direction you didn't see coming, and you don't know who's holding the weapon. That night she called Marcus at home. He answered on the second ring, immediately concerned by the unusual hour. "I need you to tell me honestly. Have you noticed anything odd in the office? Anyone accessing files they shouldn't? Any strange requests?" There was a pause. "Ashley, what's going on?" She told him. About the fraudulent transactions, about the Stratton account, about the unauthorized access allegations. "Jesus," Marcus said quietly. "No, I haven't noticed anything, but I'm in early tomorrow. Let me ask around carefully. If someone's doing something, there are usually signs." "Be careful how you ask," Ashley warned. "I don't know if this is someone specific or something systemic. I don't know who to trust right now." The next morning, Marcus came into her office with his coffee and closed the door behind him. "I talked to Jennifer in IT," he said quietly. "Off the record. She says there's been a pattern of access to your login credentials that doesn't match your usual activity. Early morning logins from different IP addresses, bulk file downloads at 3 and 4 in the morning." "Someone's using my credentials," Ashley said, not a question. "Looks like it," Marcus confirmed. "The question is how they got them." That's when Ashley remembered. 2 months ago, she'd received an email asking her to verify her login information for a security update. She'd clicked the link, entered her credentials, and then realized a moment too late that something was off about the email address. Not quite right. A misspelling that you'd miss if you were rushing. She'd changed her password immediately after, thinking it was fine. But what if it wasn't? "I need to talk to the police again," Ashley said. "And I need to talk to an employment attorney." "I know someone," Marcus said. "She's good, aggressive. She'll know how to handle this." The attorney's name was Patricia Alvarez, and she had an office in a building on K Street that felt like every other law building in D.C. Glass and steel and the smell of expensive coffee. Patricia herself was in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a way of moving that suggested she'd fought her way through more than a few legal battles. Ashley laid out everything: the fraudulent transactions, the email phishing attempt, the Stratton account allegations, the unauthorized access logs. Patricia listened without interrupting, making notes. When Ashley finished, Patricia leaned back in her chair and was quiet for a long moment. "This is coordinated," Patricia said finally. "Someone didn't just stumble into your credentials. Someone targeted you. The question is who and why. Is there anyone at the firm who resents you? Anyone who might benefit from you being removed?" Ashley thought of the partners who'd questioned her partnership appointment, the associates she'd passed over for promotions, the clients who'd specifically asked for someone else. But none of them felt like a match for this level of sophistication. "I don't know," she admitted. "Then we need to find out," Patricia said. "In the meantime, we're going to file a fraud report with the FBI, because this crosses state lines with the bank fraud component. We're going to demand that your firm conduct a full security audit with a third party, and we're going to send a letter to the Stratton's attorney informing them that you're a victim of credential theft, not a perpetrator. That should at least get them to pause before they move forward with accusations." "What about my job?" Ashley asked. "That depends on whether your firm stands behind you or throws you to the wolves," Patricia said bluntly. "Some firms will, some won't. The ones that won't are the ones you don't want to work for anyway." That night, Ashley sat in her townhouse and felt the walls closing in. Every email felt suspect. Every text felt like a potential threat. She didn't sleep. She sat on her couch with her laptop, watching her bank accounts refresh obsessively, waiting for the next violation. At 3 in the morning, she got a notification. Another transaction, $500. She watched it go through, and something inside her broke. She was being hunted, and she didn't even know by whom. The next morning, she called Robert and requested an emergency meeting with him and the firm's managing partner, a man named Victor Chen, who rarely involved himself in day-to-day operations. They met in a conference room on the 5th floor, and Ashley brought a folder with copies of everything: the police report, the FBI fraud notice, Patricia's initial letter to the Strattons, the IT department's access logs. "Someone is using my credentials to make unauthorized transactions on my personal accounts and to access client files," Ashley said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion pulling at her. I'm hiring an attorney. I'm cooperating fully with the FBI, and I'm putting you on notice that if this firm blames me for the Stratton account breach, I will file a countersuit for failure to maintain system security and defamation. Victor's expression remained neutral. We're not blaming you, Ashley, but we need you to understand that this situation is complicated. Clients are nervous, partners are nervous. We need to be very careful about how we proceed. What you mean is you need to protect the firm, Ashley said. I understand, but I'm telling you right now, I didn't do this, and I'm going to prove it. Walking back to her office afterward, Ashley felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there, but it had crystallized into something else. Anger, determination, the understanding that she was not going to be destroyed by someone else's game. That evening, as she was leaving the office, she ran into Brandon Matthews in the lobby. Brandon was a junior associate, 28 years old, sharp dresser, always friendly in that way that didn't quite reach his eyes. They'd never worked together on anything substantial, but she'd seen him around, had noticed that he was the kind of guy the senior partners liked. Ambitious, good-looking, the type who seemed destined for partnership track. Hey, Ashley, he said, his tone casual. Rough week? She hesitated. There was nothing in his words that should have set off alarm bells, and yet something about the way he was looking at her made her skin prickle. Fine, she said. Just a lot going on. I heard, he said. Tough break with the Stratton account. Those things happen, though. You win some, you lose some. Mm-hmm, she said, already moving past him. Oh, hey, have you thought about maybe taking a step back from things for a while? Sometimes when you're under stress, it helps to just decompress. Take some vacation time. Ashley stopped and turned to look at him fully. Why would you suggest that? Just being friendly, he said, his smile never wavering. Sometimes these situations blow over faster if you're not around, you know? Less drama, less complications. The implication landed like a punch. Ashley looked at this young man, this person who had no reason to know anything about her situation except what he'd overheard or been told, and she saw it clearly. He knew something, or he was involved in something, or he was delivering a message from someone who was. Thanks for the advice, she said coldly, but I'm not going anywhere. She walked out of the building and sat in her car, her hands shaking. Brandon Matthews. She pulled out her phone and called Marcus. What do you know about Brandon Matthews? She asked without preamble. Why? Just answer. He's ambitious, smart, comes from money, I think. Why? Has he been at the firm long? Maybe 5 years? Ashley, what's this about? She told him about the lobby encounter, about the way Brandon had suggested she take time off. That could be nothing, Marcus said carefully. Just him being a jerk. Or it could be something, Ashley said. Find out everything you can about him, carefully, and don't tell anyone. That night, she called Patricia and told her about the conversation with Brandon. That's interesting, Patricia said. It's not proof of anything, but it's interesting. I'll add it to the file. In the meantime, I want you to document everything. Every conversation, every strange email, every moment that feels off. Write it down with dates and times. We might need it. By Friday, Marcus had come back with information. Brandon had been hired fresh out of law school, had moved up the ranks quickly, was known to be friendly with several of the senior partners, and had recently taken on the lead for a new business development initiative that focused on financial services clients. Financial services clients. The kind of clients who would care about fraud, about security breaches, about account access. I think he's involved, Ashley said to Patricia over the phone. You think, but you don't know, Patricia cautioned. And more importantly, he's going to be very careful to cover his tracks if he is. What we need is evidence, something concrete. Then we start digging, Ashley said, because I'm not going down for something I didn't do, and I'm not letting this go. It was that moment, that decision to stop being reactive and start being strategic, that changed everything. Ashley Washington, who had built her life on precision and control, was about to learn that sometimes you have to break your own rules to survive. And sometimes, the person holding the knife looks like he should be your friend. 3 weeks later, the truth would finally come to light. But first, she would have to descend much further into darkness. First, she would have to lose almost everything. First, she would have to become someone she didn't recognize, driven by a fury that burned cold and bright and absolutely focused. The hunt had begun.